Decree is what we call her. And I want to go over her background just a little bit. I want to also talk a little bit about her lived experiences and how they inform sort of what she's doing now. And then I'll give you a quick, brief overview of some of the questions that we're going to ask. So let's go ahead and jump in. So I'm going to do her bio right now. She's I have this in front of me, so I'm going to read it because I don't want to miss anything. She's a visionary leader and expert in program development, which is why we have her on this Lunch and Learn today. She's dedicated to designing sustainable solutions for underserved youth. She's journeyed from the foster care system all the way up to earning her PhD, which is quite remarkable. Combined with lived experiences, with deep expertise to create transformative programs. She's partnered with nonprofits and other organizations to build impactful initiatives, and she's research focused on supporting foster youth transitioning into higher education and adulthood, which is quite needed. And if you guys know, I don't know if you've dealt with foster youth, but if you want to look at a population that is at the bottom, the absolute bottom of all um, positive data, you look at foster youth. It's incredible that anyone gets through that and comes out of it and is successful. That goes all the way through the foster care. It's really a tough haul. Usually they're in jail, they're on drugs, or they're homeless. I mean, if you look at the data, that's just the data. So I'm really excited that she's going to be helping us with some of those, some of that thought process as well. She is a sought after keynote speaker. So if you guys need any keynote speakers, she's also available for that. And she's an advocate for youth empowerment. And she's recognized on PBS as an American champion. So she's quite remarkable. And I just want to welcome Lucretia to the talk. Thank you for being here. And we're going to go ahead and jump in with some quick questions, and then we'll jump right into why the individuals are here today. So I have a question for you. You've dedicated your career to the empowerment of vulnerable youth. Can you share a particular inspiring moment that solidified your passion for this work?
Absolutely. Good morning and good afternoon to some of you all. Thanks for coming. We're really excited to have this conversation. This is work that I breathe. There's not one particular instance. I think it really is seeing the young people that I've had the privilege of working with and seeing them now as adults becoming successful and remembering just being in the trenches with those young people, having doubt, unsure about which way to go, unclear about their path, trying to be the support system for their families while only being teenagers and figuring it out for themselves. So helping them and supporting them to get to college, figure out their career, and develop a sustainable lifestyle. And now seeing them as adults is really the most rewarding thing I can ask for, and is why I do this work. Because I believe that young people have potential, community members have potential, and we have to tap into it. And so by designing these programs, right, that really invest in our young people and those relationships, I mean, the outcomes are going to be amazing. So that's why I do it. I do it for the young people because you know what they say, the youth are our future.
In the future, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you a question that you're not probably prepared for, but you might be able to throw some estimations at it. What was the your success rate when you were over at a place called Home of the kids going through there, and then tell them a little bit about a place called Home and what you did there. I think that might be helpful.
Absolutely. So I was at a place called Home for almost 10 years. And when I came in to that organization, there was a skeleton of a program, not much there. Young people were coming in and it was more like a drop-in center. After school, they'd come in, they hang out, they watch TV, they talk about one another and, go on about their business. And so what I saw was a lot of potential. A lot of those young people were crowding themselves in my office, asking questions about college and how to get a job, et cetera, et cetera. So I started building, which wasn't a part of my job description. I was doing something completely different, but I saw the need. So I started building. So I built this huge program that became really six prongs: college advocacy, college access, mentorship, career readiness, entrepreneurship, all these programs that really supported young people in getting to the next stage. Now, when I started, the transition rate from high school to college was maybe 30%. By the time I left, it was 95%.
Yeah, that's crazy. I
It's
remember that.
crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And so what we have to think about though, and I'm a little bit of a data nerd, so if I get too caught up, let me know. But we have to remember that at some point in sophomore year, typically, especially our boys, our Black boys would jump out of the program. They were no
Yeah.
longer interested in coming to an after school program. And so not only did our retention rate for the after school program increase, those young people then went on to college. So we had crazy success rates because we really did the holistic approach.
That's fantastic. And I again, I was a part of that in some ways. I did some of the interviews. I actually came in and did a couple career days where I taught resume building and interview prep. And so yeah, those children were remarkable. Jumping back, can you give me one of your favorite books that you recommend everybody should read?
It would have to be Angela Davis's Our Prison Obsolete. Our Prison's
Uh,
Obsolete.
oh wow, that's a great book.
Isn't
That
it
is a
amazing?
great book.
I mean,
Yes.
talk about, and I say
Yeah.
that because it gets you thinking outside of the box. And that's what
Yes.
all of this is about for me. I want
Yeah.
you to throw away any conventional,
Hmm.
thing that you've seen before in working with youth. And I want you to think differently, think harder. And I think that book really pushes you to think outside the box. How
Yeah.
do we transform these systems to work for us and not against us?
No question. No question. And last question I'm going to ask because I really want to get into this stuff. I really do. So I mean, I had a bunch of fun questions, but I'm going to ask one more fun question, and then we're going to jump right into it. So, if you could have dinner with any three historical people figures, who would that be? And that's living and past.
I love that. I'm going to tell you who they are. Michelle Obama, right? To think
Okay.
about being married to the most powerful man in the world.
Okay.
And I say that because we are dynamic people and, wife, mother, all the
Yeah.
things. And that's how I
No
would love to
question.
pick her brain. Toni Morrison, one of my favorite
Oh
authors.
wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
mine just brilliant. And Ida B. Wells, who really
Oh
uncovered the
wow.
mission of what
Yeah.
I
Those are
now
great choices. Gosh, those are
so,
great choices.
yeah, it would be a good meal.
Yeah, those are great choices. Okay, okay. So let's jump in. Tell us a little bit about your research. Like, how has your research on foster youth transitioned to higher education, then inform your programs?
Absolutely.
How did that happen?
It was by happenstance, I'll be honest. I didn't understand my circumstances until I got into my PhD program. I knew that I grew up differently, right? But I felt a lot of people lived with their grandmother. A lot of people go through these
Hmm.
challenges as young people. I didn't really think about it that much because I was doing just fine. My advisor for my PhD program said, "How did you get here?" And I said,
Yeah,
"Well, what do you mean? I'm
yeah,
decent at school. I've got the grades. I'm here." She said, "No, no, no. People like you don't come to PhD programs." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You grew up with your mother. You were in the foster care system." She said, "I read all about you. People like you don't make it here." And that's when I started doing the research on youth and foster care
hmm,
and figured out that there was something that was going on with this system that wasn't serving young people. And when I looked into the foster care system more, I said, what is going on? There wasn't a lot of information around youth who had made it. Again, a lot of
yeah.
the outcomes of
That's true.
foster youth are negative. Very few people actually write about
Hmm.
the positive outcomes of youth in this system. So that's exactly what I did for my dissertation. I found the young people who successfully transitioned to college from high school and tried to figure out what the sweet sauce was. And you know what it was? Relationships.
Yeah,
All of this is about relationships. And
yeah, no
so,
question.
yep. So that sent me down the rabbit hole of doing that research and really digging into developing these programs for underserved youth.
I wasn't adopted until I was 9, and so I was in the system for a minute, and I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful that I went through that system and learned the things that I've learned because um, I don't think I'd be sitting here right now if it wasn't for me going through these trials and tribulations. I mean, I've probably been in, I don't know, 7 or 8 different families before I was adopted. So and it wasn't the best experiences in most situations, you know. So yeah, so I hear you, and I don't know if I ever told you this, but my wife is a social worker as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, so and she's very, very good at what she does. Okay, so let's look at the next section. I'm going to jump into needs assessment and community engagement. So my question is how do you approach needs assessment and community engagement when designing a program for underserved communities? So how is that done?
Yeah, this is an excellent question. And I used to work for an organization back in Delaware where I did my master's, where I would help people who were coming in to design new programs figure
Mhm.
out, what were the appropriate steps. And the first thing I would tell them is you have to be able to identify what the issue is. A lot of people come in and they want to do something that they're passionate about, which
Right,
is great, or their own personal lived experience,
right,
which is great. But is that the actual experience of the people in the community that you're
exactly.
trying to serve? And so I always say you have to do the research. If you are of the community, great.
Right,
Bring some folks in, ask some questions, and involve them on designing what the solutions are. If you're not from the community, go ahead, find someone who is of the community, have them help you bring folks in and ask those questions. But you have to be really clear about what problem you're trying to solve and how you plan to solve it. So be
right.
really clear about that. The other thing I will say is that the asset mapping is absolutely critical. What other
Agreed.
services are being offered in your area that do the same thing or a
Hmm.
similar thing as you're trying to do? So not only do you want to see what's happening in the area, but you want to know how they're doing it and what is the difference between your program and their program, right? Because
And can you collaborate with them?
can't
Can we do
that's
something?
yep,
Yes.
that's the
Yes.
narrow one. If you have already identified them, see about partnering. If you're starting a new program, I wouldn't even start a new program until after you've volunteered with that organization to see how they run. So
Exactly.
you need to know who's in the community, who's doing the what, who's the mover and shakers, and be really clear about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're doing it. And that's going to make you stand out to funders.
We had a gentleman that was on here a few months back. He was fantastic. His name is Malcolm Brickhouse. I'm sorry, Michael Brickhouse. And he is the dean over at the Divinity School, but he also works with the Lilly Foundation as a
Okay.
liaison. And he pointed out that a lot of the Black churches that he works with that have programs that are applying for grants, they go in with the mindset that they know what's going on and they don't do any research. And so when you apply for a foundation grant, they know everything of what's going on out there. And when you come in and say, "Oh, this is an issue," and this is blah blah blah, they're going to be like, "Yeah, that's not an issue," or "That's an issue. Why aren't you talking to this organization?" Or what? Or tell us who your collaborators are and what are you doing here? So you really, really need to. The point that Lucretia made is you have to get outside of the four walls of your church and make sure that what you're doing, if it's going to be community focused, that the community needs that, or that you can fit in a spot where nobody else is filled, or you can collaborate with somebody else that's doing that. That is critical. Otherwise, if you're applying for that grant, they're going to know that you don't know what you're talking about and you haven't done any research, and they're not going to fund you.
Yeah.
Period.
It's so clear. So many applications that I see that go through, they can't connect the dots clearly
Right.
because nine times out of 10, you really don't know what you're talking about. You know what, that there's an issue. You know what you want to do to that you think is going to solve that issue, but all the stuff in between is missing. And that's what you
Yes.
need. You need to know all the good stuff in between in order to connect the dots, because assuming that the person that's reading the application has no idea about your community, has no idea about this issue, you have to be able to fill in those blanks. So it's very
Yeah.
critical that you get in the community and talk
No
to people.
question. I remember when we were working with CAC and I was over at Verb, we were trying to get a grant from them. And what was amazing, the associates and the assistants had PhDs. I mean, these people, they are ballers. And so when you're putting together your program, you really have to bring it. And I have to say that it needs to be data driven. You
For
have to
sure.
come up with some numbers. So a lot of times I'm working with some of the churches, um, and they say that they have a program. And then I'll say to them, oh, that's fantastic. It sounds great. Say it's a food bank. That's great. And I'll say, okay, so what are your goals this year? And they
Yes.
look at me like I'm speaking Greek or something. And I'll be, okay, that's cool. So then what did you guys do last year? Like, what was your targets? Like, what did you
Yeah.
do? What are you trying to change? How many people are you going to try to? They have no idea. All they know is that they want to serve food to hungry people. And that's great. And you can do that. But if you're asking for money, you better have some numbers. You better have, you better have some goals. I mean, can you speak on that, Lucretia?
Absolutely. Data is my thing. I'm a little bit of a hidden data nerd, but I'll talk about it here. I love data. Data tells a story. And I think a lot of people think that simply counting the number of people that you serve is going to be good enough. And it simply isn't. You have to be really clear about your theory of change. What am I doing that is going to spark a change in behavior or outcome? And then you have to measure that. So that can be kind of tricky because some of these things are these, really high level thinking skills. And other times it's just simply a count, but you don't want to rely simply on the count. You really have to think critically about how you're going to measure the change behavior or impact that your service or intervention has on the community that you're serving. So it's very critical that you work with someone to really figure that out, especially if this is not your lane.
That's absolutely correct. And the one thing I want to say though is I don't want to scare those that are looking to design better programs. It can be simple. It doesn't have to be, you're not, it doesn't have to be a white paper that you're applying for, or you're applying for a grant at Keckers. It doesn't have to be that, but just know your numbers. Simple stuff that you can get off of Google, simple stuff you can get off of Chat GPT. Just know your numbers of what you're serving, what the gap is in the community, those things, and you will do fantastic. But you just got to know, you need to have goals, you need to have objectives, you need to have long-term strategies, you need to have timelines, and you have to have those things. If you don't, and you say, hey, we have a program here, you serve food, that's not a program.
Right.
Serving food is not, having a goal, having measurements, having all those things, that's a program. So just
Absolutely.
understand the difference between the two. And the goal and the focus of this particular lunch and learn, and why we brought Lucretia here, is because we're looking at funding programs. And so if you're looking at funding programs, we need to be doing the things that she's saying here. So what else would you add, Lucretia, that they should, as they're moving forward in program development, what other advice would you give them?
So, in thinking about just the data, just to kind of put a pin in that, I think of it as a funnel approach, right? There's
Yeah.
this wide lens that gets really, really narrow. And so, let's say you're feeding the homeless, right? You want to talk about homelessness or hunger nationally, worldwide, and then you want to narrow it down. I want to know specifically, how does this impact your community and the folks that you are serving? So that's one way to look at data that doesn't, overwhelm you, but just like, what is the hunger issue in the world, in our nation, in our state,
Mhm.
in our county, in our, right? And you want
Yeah.
to dwindle that down to say, this is what's happening in my specific community, X, Y, and Z. So that makes it really easy. The other thing that I will say that a lot of people miss is they don't spend enough time on the mission and the vision.
I
That is,
agree.
we spend, I mean, in my line of work, I have sessions with folks and we're revising that mission and vision because the individual words and the wordsmithing, they matter. And when you're really clear about mission and vision, it cuts off a lot of the noise. Because then when you're approached for funding, you're very clear about what you do and what you don't do. And then it really sets you up to partner well with other organizations that are in that same field. So you got to be really clear about that mission and vision before you set out to start any kind of program. And even if you started programs, it's okay to come back and revise your mission and vision to make sure, okay, everything that we're doing is
Yes.
in alignment with that mission and vision. And things that aren't in alignment, we need to rethink and perhaps wind down that program and spend our resources elsewhere.
Yes, 100%. 100%. So I want to do get Alex, our tech, to put up a poll. And the poll is we just want to know sort of what your challenges are so we can tailor some of the conversation in that direction. So the poll is, what do you believe is your biggest challenge in designing effective programs for the underserved community? And so go ahead and fill that, or just, it's a multiple choice. So pick the one that most applies to you.
I answered the poll too, Paul. I hope that's
Yeah,
okay.
I think we all have to. We have to figure that out. So we'll take a moment. So we'll keep going while people are filling out the poll. And I want to go into sustainability and funding. And so what strategies do you recommend for ensuring the long-term sustainability of programs developed for underserved communities? And I probably can talk about that a little bit as well.
Absolutely. I think the first thing that comes to mind is partnerships, right? You're going to be able to, you're not going to be an expert in everything, right? But and I
Correct.
believe in the holistic approach. So even if you can't provide the service, you can provide a confident referral to another organization that's doing service that's complementary to yours. So I would say partnerships are key in order for sustainability to happen. And I will say, and you can speak to this more, Paul, that funders are asking for partnerships, right? Like they're
Correct.
asking for them in the
Correct.
applications, right? So it's something that you really have to do. We also talked about the defining of your measurable goals. That has to be critical, and you have to make sure that you're doing that consistently and not just once every 10 years or once at the onset of your program, but coming back together and saying, are these goals still something that we need to reach for? I love the nonprofit sector because it's so nimble. If something
Yeah.
is happening in the
Yeah.
world, this sector can pivot so quickly and meet
Yeah.
the needs of the
Me
community.
too.
Yeah, I love it. And that's what excites me. And so you have to be really clear about what those goals are, how you're going to measure it, and how you as a team are going to tackle it. Thirdly, I'll say make sure that you have community engagement in your plans. You don't want them to feel haphazard. You don't want to, oh, yeah, we got, something that you're just checking off. I've got to make sure we check in with community. You want to have
No question.
planned times so that you can hear from the community. Did this actually do what we intended it for it to do? Did our program serve its purpose? What are some other things that we can do to improve your experience, etc.? And then I'll say the evaluation, what do I call feedback loop, right? Similar to the community engagement, but wanting to make sure that you're receiving feedback regarding processes and outcomes of your program. So I think that speaks a lot to what funders are looking for, that you're engaged and in touch with your community, that you're very clear about what you're doing and how you're going to do it, and that you're creating partnerships with people to help leverage those funds.
And one of my favorite things to add, and this is one of the things that the Black church is very, very strong with, and I think it's something that they underutilize. And if usually within your colleagues, the people that you know, somebody is running a program that you want to run in another state or another city, and they're kicking butt at it, and you don't call them and
For
say,
sure.
what are you doing? And how can I do that over here? Guess what? That's one of the other reasons why Lucretia loves the nonprofit sector. Guess what? We give our stuff away. I remember when I wrote this, I think it was what was it? A $4 million grant on sustainability for a school for scholarships. And all the other schools that were in the network were like, what's that? I said, and I emailed it to them in Word. And you
Yeah.
know what they did? They took my school's name off, put their school's name, made the numbers right, and sent it out. And I think we raised like $18 million with that. So make sure you're reaching out to your colleagues that are doing extremely well in that sector, and have a conversation, develop a relationship with. And guess what? You're probably doing something within your program that they can improve at. So it's a two-way sort of relationship. So make sure you're reaching out to your family, I should say, and asking them for help. And then the other thing that I would ask is bring in someone that knows about what foundations are looking for when you're asking for when you're creating a program. Make sure and someone like Lucretia, as a matter of fact, because you and the reason why I'm saying foundation, you may not even go to a foundation to ask them for money. But the reason why I'm saying prepare it like you're going to a foundation is because that's the top. They're asking the most questions and they're asking the best questions. And they're not moved so much by emotions. So they want you to put together a program that's going to actually work. And let me just quickly tell you this. I remember when we applied for a grant for the Keck Foundation in Los Angeles. Keck is massive. They're like
Huge.
$1 billion. They're massive, and they barely give money to high schools, but they reached down and focused on us for some reason. And we ended up getting the grant. It wasn't a whole lot. It was like 100, I don't know, maybe 160,000 or something like that. But the reason I'm bringing that up, what was significant about that grant was that grant and the application process and the reporting process, it made us a better school. It made us a better school because of what they put us through. And it made the teachers, because we had to go to the teachers. It was for the STEM program. And we say, hey, what's your goal for this year? They're like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Well, this application here that we're applying for says you need to, they came up with a goal. And then, no, it wasn't the right goal. Keck was like, no, that's not a goal. This is a goal. It needs to have measure. And then all of a sudden we mobilized that throughout the school. We became a better school because we applied for a grant and got a 106, and that was 10 years ago. They're a better school just because of that. So when I'm saying to you, apply, write these grants up like you're applying for a foundation, and use chat or use AI. AI will help you fill in you can type it in and say, what am I missing? It'll tell you.
Yes.
It'll tell you what you're missing. And it'll do a pretty good job too. It'll tell you, and then you can go in and try to fill it, and then you can ask it, how does this look? It'll tell you how that looks. And so use AI, but really, really get involved with dig into your programs, because they are the lifeblood of your institutions. They're why you exist, outside of the church. So really dig in and really develop these programs in a scientific research based way, not just emotional. Because although emotional is what starts it, but what keeps it going in the sustainability, as Lucretia said, it's the data. It's the data. So let's go ahead and look at the poll. Can we pull the poll up, Alex, and see where we are? Okay,
Ooh.
so it looks like a lack of funding is a huge one. Um, Unclear program goals. Okay, that's what we're talking about right now. And misalignment with community. Oh, wow. Yeah, these are exactly what we said. And difficulty measuring it. Yeah, this is so what Lucretia just said to you is exactly what you need to do. Do you want to talk about the poll a little bit?
I do. And I love this because the three at the bottom, unclear program outcome goals, misalignment with community needs, and difficulty measuring impact all lead to the top, lack of funding and resources.
Exactly.
You,
Well
you
said.
can't you can't get the
That's well
dollars
said.
in if you're unclear about your goals, your outcomes, the community needs, and you cannot measure anything outside of a count, a simple count. So all of these actually lead to wanting to get, and I'll say this, Paul, which you touched on, is that a lot of people think that you don't have to spend a lot of time with the fundraising. You've got a lot of people who've got good hearts and good ideas and good connections with the community that are doing amazing work. And you are going to run yourself into the ground if you
No
don't get the
question.
funding you need to be able to hire a team and support the vision. And I always say, do you want this work to live on beyond you?
No
Right?
question.
Because folks need to make a living. That's the reality of it. And so bringing on a team, getting other brilliant minds into your program, you can't do that if you don't have funding. So really getting the foundation of your organization, even if you've been running for 20 years, right? Making
Yeah.
sure that your foundation is tight before we go after some of these large funding sources and make sure that you can, leave a legacy that goes beyond you in your communities.
And the other thing too that I would just add to that, I love this conversation, by the way. But the other thing that I would add to that is, as you're designing your program, and say you get a gift or a grant or a foundation, that changes everything, because now instead of just sort of, yeah, I run the food bank program, or I run the food bank, you're running a program that is funded. You're running a program that somebody thinks is doing great work and that's going to grow. And the more you do that year after year, this is a skill that you're building. This is not everybody can do this. I'm telling you, I've talked to hundreds of program, officers that have programs. They don't have programs because they don't have any goals. They don't have measurements. They don't have long-term, short-term strategies. They don't have timelines. Whatever you're designing, you need to have those things. And then once you get really good at that, you can put that on your resume. You can say, I design, not only, I design programs that are funded. That's different.
For
When you
sure.
can come in and fund yourself, that's very different.
Yeah.
So take all this stuff in, because writing and putting together a better program, it's just a win, 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 win.
Right.
That's
I'll
it.
say, I wish I could see faces and hands, but maybe you all can raise your virtual hands. There is, something really special about implementing programs. But how many of you actually feel like you're unclear about where you're going? You really don't know what the next move. Your calendar and your timelines
Great
are
question.
consistently moving because you're unsure about what's coming next or what direction you should go. That is
Great
why a
question.
strategic plan is so important. It always feels like there's things that are coming down the pike and it's so heavy on your shoulder, you're unsure. That's why you need to sit down and really think about what is our 3-year plan. And if it's to land $1,000 grant, is it to land $1 million grant? You got to put the things in order, right, in order to
Reverse
get there.
engineer.
So,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. Instead of saying, oh, fly by the seat of our pants, which is what we all do because we have so many hats. And in the nonprofit sector, we're the executive director, we're the
Right.
marketing director, we're doing all of these things, and that's fine to begin with. But if you're really down the line and you're looking for long-term sustainability, you've got to sit down and say, what's my 3-year plan? What's my 5-year plan? How are we going to accomplish this? And so a full strategic plan is really going to help you get clear about where you're spending your resources, including your time.
And the other thing that I would add to that, it doesn't have to be very complicated. You can keep it, again, you can use AI to help you do that. You just upload all your stuff in there and say, I want to put together a 3-year plan. It'll do it for you. And all you got to do is make sure all the parts are moving in there, but use AI to help you. But the other beautiful thing that Lucretia is touching on is, you guys know how when you're running your programs, somebody with great intentions comes in and says, I want you to do this as well within this program. And then next week, someone else comes in, says, I want you to do this, with this program as well. Well, guess what? When you have a description of your program, or you have a strategic, plan, a 3-year plan, and you've got it all laid out and it's been approved by whoever needs to approve it, your trustees or your president or the pastor or whatever, when someone comes in and says, that's fantastic, we will put that in the parking lot. And then, because this is what we're doing this year. And you don't get thrown off, you don't get thrown to the left, you don't get thrown to the right, because you have your plan and it's laid out. When you don't have a plan, you have nothing to say when somebody comes in and says, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. You just have nothing to say.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've seen that happen so often.
Yeah, you're being pulled all these different ways and you're just unclear about where the line stops. Who are we actually serving? One of the things that I do for organizations, because sometimes there's so many things that they don't know about this sector and what they need to be looking at, and then B, they're unsure about what their priorities are. And so what I would recommend is just a quick organizational assessment. And you know what, Paul, I'm going to send you the tool that you can send out to everybody here on the
Great.
line.
Great.
Just a quick organizational assessment to look at your organization. Do you have these things in place? How strong are they? How often do you visit them? Right. And so once you have a clear understanding of some of your shortcomings or some of the areas that could use some improvement, then you help to set your priorities. Again, all of this is with the idea that you want to go after major funding and that you want to make sure that your communities are being served at their best capacity. right? And how do you do that is making sure that you yourself are not stretched thin, that you have a team that you can actually pay to come in and run your programs, and that you are very clear about who you're serving, how you're serving them, and why you're serving them.
I agree 100%. And I just think, you know, that we're dropping some really good stuff here. And the one thing that I want to say to everybody, when Lucretia, when we send this out to you all, she's going to include her contact information. I highly recommend that you reach out to her and, talk to her and tell her and see where she can help you. Because if you get this down, this changes everything. It changes everything because now your programs are sustainable. And then all of a sudden you start changing your community because you have this program and it's growing, and all these kids, 90% of the kids are going to college now. Guess what? We do 2 generations of that, and then everybody's in trouble.
Yeah.
Everybody's in trouble. So let's get fine tune these programs that you guys are putting together. That's key. So I really want you to reach out to Lucretia after you receive that. Now, also, I want to. I'm glad that this particular audience is more lively than normal, and I'm digging that. So what I want to do is I want to invite everybody to ask questions in the chat. And so write a few questions and we'll try to pick some as we're going. So please, and they can be particular to your program. They don't have to be general questions, but we have one of the best program designers in the country. This is your opportunity to ask her questions. Now I'm going to move on. What are the unique challenges of developing and implementing programs in underserved communities, and how can these challenges be overcome?
I think it's really what you said, Paul, is that we lack infrastructure. We
Yeah.
lack infrastructure, and honestly, there's not a lack of access to this information because this information exists online on all the tools. But if we're unclear about how to ask the right questions or what questions we should be asking, it makes it challenging to get to the information. And so I will say that it's really critical to ensure that you have the right people that you're able to ask these from these tools, and that you're also looking at the people, like you said. Listen, the nonprofit sector is so giving of information. There's no shortage of issues, and there's no shortage of money to this sector, right? And so reach out to people, talk to them. Everybody has a unique issue. Everybody is dealing with a different community, a different circumstances, different leadership, whatever the case is. And so it really is a case by case situation. Make sure you're asking the questions, talking to the people who are in the community. Those are some of the challenges. Other than that, everything is really at your fingertips. You really, I mean, I love this stuff. As you can see, I'm leaning into this stuff because I love it so much. And I think everyone should have access to this information. And so it really is carving out the time, being clear about your goals, being clear about what you want your strategy to be, carving out the time and getting it done.
And I think I'm thinking of a part 2 and bringing Lucretia back and have her design a program on here. It'll be like we'll have like a template, and we'll give you guys this template, but we'll have her, and what we'll do is we'll maybe have a little contest and have you guys send one of your programs in, and we'll design it. You're gonna have to add some things to it. It's not gonna be perfect, but we will design this program, go through the program, so you guys can see how Lucretia does it, and you can be better equipped to doing it. But better than that, I really encourage you guys to reach out to Lucretia because this stuff is not easy. And so once you get it down, though, it becomes easy. So we have a question here. I see a question from Yvette Johnson that I want to ask. And she says, I'm starting a new wellness business for clergy of color. Other than YouTube videos, how do I stay connected to this community? I'm not sure about that question. Do you understand what she's saying, Lucretia?
No, but come off mute, Yvette.
Yeah,
Hi,
come
Yvette.
off mute and ask the question.
Hey,
Hey, welcome.
Thank you. So I came because Lucretia was speaking, but the information and what you're saying, all of it is so rich that I don't want this time to be over and I can't stay connected to this conversation or the work you're doing. And I know you have YouTube videos, but is there a mailing list? Is there some other way
I see.
that I can stay connected to the work that you're doing? Because I hear in some of what you're saying that you're serving ministers as well. And I'm doing a retreat for
Right.
ministers of color. I'm doing a wellness portal, and I'm starting at the beginning of this.
Hmm.
So and this is not, I come from network TV.
Okay.
So I'm learning this sector. So I just want to stay connected because I'm so excited about what I'm hearing.
Okay. Well, I'm actually trying to find a way to hire Lucretia, so she knows that. So I should say, work with her. She's above me, so I would have to work with her. So that's one thing. So I want you guys to be aware. In fact, I was trying to bring her in on another project, but we ended up going in a different direction. But yeah, you can certainly sign up to our newsletter, and we'll put that in the chat. But the other thing is I really do encourage you to reach out to Lucretia too, because I mean, she's a monster. I mean, I've seen the programs that she's put together and they're remarkable. They work. And so I would encourage that as well. And in terms of a community, we do this every second Wednesday. The next month we'll probably do it on the third Wednesday, but we do this every second Wednesday of the month. And so we're constantly doing these lunch and learns because our goal is to serve the Black ministries. That's what we do, the ones that are doing things in the community. I'm not really there to help the church grow in terms of getting people in the pews. I'm there for your community programs, for what you're doing in the community. That's sort of what we're here for. So we will send you guys how to sign up for our e-newsletter. And again, we have our weekly, or I'm sorry, our monthly lunch and learns. And then I would encourage you to reach out to Lucretia because she's just the best of the best
Yeah,
at
I
this.
already have.
Okay, yeah. So let me keep going. Let's see. I'm looking at a few questions, but let me get Lucretia started on, and I'll look at some questions. Um, Lucretia, can you talk about? Wait, how about let's do this one. Pose a scenario. Here's a scenario-based question. If an organization wants to create a new program for a community facing economic hardship, what key steps would you recommend?
I would say first figure out to make sure that you are very clear about the mission. What realistically can you accomplish by doing whatever the intervention is? I do logic models, and so I work backwards. And this is giving you a preview of what our next session could look like. But I work backwards, right? The long-term goal I've always been taught, make the world a better place. That's everyone's long-term goal. You want to leave this place better than you found it. Your medium-term goal is
Yes.
going to be something like, I want to ensure that 100% of my congregation members are above the poverty line, let's just say, right? And that's a goal. Okay, that's the goal. That's a very clear goal. 100% of our congregation are above poverty line, whatever that is for your community, or the federal poverty line, by X date. That's the goal. And I want to make sure that I can get there. Then I would say, what activities are going to get me to that goal? How many workshops do we need? Are we passing out jobs? Do we have connection, right? Okay, if we're giving them jobs, are giving jobs enough, right? Do we need mentorship? Do they need training? Do they need clothes, right? To just get in the door. So you have to think about all of the things from A to Z to figure out, how am I going to get to said goal? And you work your way backwards. Okay, well, what already exists in my community? What assets do I possess? My board, my time, professional experts, and you work your way backwards and say, what are the gaps? That's what I need to be working on. So thinking about the program holistically, not just an activity that you want to do, but the outcome that you want to see in your community and what are the steps that are going to take you to get there.
That's great. I love that. And to add to that, we had a gentleman on, uh, Dr. Rudy Ramus. He's a pastor over at St. John's in Houston, and it's something he's serving, like, I don't know, 15,000 meals a week at his. It's crazy what he's doing out there. He's got a huge homeless and insecurity facility out. He's just doing great work. And I asked him, I said, what advice would you give someone just starting out in a program? And you know what he said? And I think it bears repeating. He said, um, take a small bite, like start with one particular thing within that cause that don't try. I'm going to say this out loud. Do not try to be everything to everybody in the space that you're in. Focus on one thing. So if, for example, they started with their food insecurity. You know what they did? They said, we're going to serve the best breakfast for individuals that need it than any other organization in the city of Houston. Guess what? They did. Next, he said, we're going to serve the best breakfast and lunch to any organization. And once they mastered that, they went on to dinner. Then he said, we're going to serve 10,000 meals. So don't try to eat the elephant with one bite. Pick one thing, become super good at it, then move to the next thing. Become a master at that. What would you say about that, Lucretia?
I love that. So the way that my brain works is I think of the entire kit and caboodle, right? Like the whole sink. I'm putting the pieces together. It looks like a puzzle piece for me. And then you reverse it. What is the most critical thing? So when I designed one of the programs, the scholarship program in South Central, it was looking, okay, who is most critical? Who do we service first? Our 12th graders, those that are getting ready to graduate and go off to college. Nobody else mattered at that moment because we couldn't really serve them well. And I love what you said, Paul, about the best breakfast. That qualifier right there changes the game because it's not just a meal. It is the best meal.
Exactly.
And that makes it different. That makes it attractive to funders, right?
Exactly.
It brings in engagement from your community because they're saying, I'm going over here where I'm getting hot breakfast, with the potatoes and the bacon versus the to-go bag, right? And then there's also no community there. So I love thinking about this in that way. So I would say the same thing. The other thing that you can do, which is just as equally amazing and beneficial, is what's the one thing that you want to do? And you do that exceptionally well. And in the process of doing that, you'll start thinking about other things to complement that work. And it'll come together very organically. So depending on the way your brain works, right? Like write it all down. And that's what I did. And folks, if you've ever worked with me, you'll come into my workspace and you'll see a big old chart piece of paper with all of my ideas dumped on it, organized in a particular way that only I understand. And that works for me. And so if you're one of those big picture thinkers, think about it all, but you can't do it all. And great. If you're, so I love all of that.
There's a question in here that Brittany put forth. She says, I heard that you are a data nerd. Do you offer consultation on how to collect data? What tools would you suggest nonprofits orgs use to collect that data?
Absolutely. I just did some work with a local school not too far from me collecting data. They had no idea that they had issues, right? So I came in, I spoke with leadership. I did a small focus group to ask some parents about, what they were experiencing and designed a survey for them. Designed the survey, sent it out to all of the different parents in the parental groups. Folks turned it back. From there, we did a few more focus groups, found some solutions to the issues, and gave an implementation plan to the organization. So there are free tools that you can use. There are some paid tools. I am totally fine with anything that Google offers. SurveyMonkey is very easy and accessible. So you don't have to buy any large, data collection tools. What is critical here is what questions you ask, how you ask them, and how you clean your data and then move forward to making recommendations.
Yeah.
Asking the questions, the order in which you ask them, all of those play a part because there's this whole thing around survey design. There's a science around survey design. So you definitely want to take your time, work with someone like myself, if you like, to design your survey in order to get the information that you need from your community.
That's perfect. And what I like to do, I'm not a program designer, but I know how to design a program to raise money. And so one of the things that I do, or I should say edit a program to raise money. And one of the things I like to do is I like that we also use secondary research. So make sure you go out there and get that secondary research that's already out there. And then you do primary research, which is what Lucretia is talking about right now. You're doing your own research, and you put those two together. That's you're now in the top echelon of individuals that are applying for that grant or asking for that gift, because you not only looked at what's a 30,000 foot, but you're also looking at what your immediate audience or individuals that are gonna, beneficiaries that are going to be using your program. So I always encourage primary as well as secondary research.
And stories are data,
oh,
right?
God.
I mean, it is
Yeah,
so
stories
rich.
are huge.
It is. And so you want to have opportunities for those open-ended questions, but they are a pain to dissect and to actually make them usable. So I like the focus groups. I like hearing the stories from the people and pulling it together in a way that makes sense, that I can hear it and then implement something. So data is wonderful in the traditional form, numbers, but your storytelling is just as rich. And that's the icing on the top. That's the cherry on the cake. You want to have all of that in order to make a compelling story. So you want all those pieces.
Yes, the stories have to inform the data, not the other way around.
Right.
And so, however, and one thing that I want to point out, team, is that I keep telling you all to, when you're writing up a program, focus on it being presented to a foundation, because you're going to have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. But when you're dealing with an individual, you're going to have all that data there. But to Lucretia's point, you're going to really lean in more on the emotional stuff for individual donors. And I'm sure you all are aware of this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Individuals give you more money than foundations do by a lot, and it's easier. Mm-hmm. So in other words, if you're thinking about applying to go to Harvard and you don't get accepted to Harvard, but you get accepted to USC or Stanford or whatever, that's what you want to do. So you want to shoot for the moon, and you may get a few stars along the way. And then if you are going towards, an individual, you throw in a bunch of emotional stories, have a little bit of data in there that you've already collected for the foundation, you already have yourself a proposal for an individual that you just have to do you want to talk about that a little bit, Lucretia?
I'm looking at the chat a little bit, and I'm trying to, I can't answer questions now, but I see all great questions. If we can't get to them,
if you see one in there, go ahead and grab it.
I do. I like Herbert's question. Should the grant rating be designed like a business plan? And then a secondary question around, what about compliance after approval of funding? And I love that. I love that a lot. So grant writing is not my bread and butter, but I do love it. And I think, Paul, this is your area, your lane. But for me, the grant writing shouldn't feel like a business plan, but it should have the elements of a business plan, if that makes sense, right?
Yes.
Like, it should really have your heart in it, because this is hard work. It's hard work, but it's also hard work. And this is a community that you care about. So when I write, as you can see, I'm a little shy. I don't, but I also write very dynamically. And so for me, grant writing should feel like this is something that you're really interested in, as well as have all of the nuts and bolts that a business plan has in it. A lot of people will say the nonprofit sector is not a real sector, right? Like we should take it less seriously, and that is false. And then same thing around your compliance question is that you should have the processes and protocols in place to effectively manage your money, period. Paul, do you want to say something to that?
Yeah, for certain. I'm always, as soon as you can, you should get you should get audited financials, independently audited financials, as soon as you can, because that opens you up to transparency, so you can apply. Because many foundations won't even accept your grant if you don't have independent audited financials. So you want to really make sure that you're doing that. And then in terms of dotting your I's and crossing your T's in terms of the fundraising and the grants, you also want to be able to put together good budgets. And you want to make sure, and it's not hard. It really isn't hard. If you're asking for, say, $50,000 for something, just have your line items of what they're going to be for, and then just check what the costs are of those individuals and put that in there. But then also, you really sort of want to make sure that you're reporting what you're supposed to report. And the one thing that I want to say to you all is, when you're feeling, and then Michael brought this up too, Michael Brickhouse, the liaison at Lilly, or he helps Lilly, in the community. Liaison is probably a stronger word than necessary. But he said, answer the question. So when you're applying for a grant, make sure that you answer the question. A lot of times we don't answer the question. We put in something that we already did on some boilerplate. We say, oh, this looks like this might fit in there. You're not answering the question. Answer the question. And now that you have AI, you can dump in your the thing that you already wrote up, and then say, put in the question in and say, how would you answer? And AI will answer that question for you. And then you can go in and edit that. So, but the reporting, you also have to report on time. You really want to make sure, because the reporting is key. You may get the funding this year, but if you miss the reporting deadlines, or you spend the money in a different area that you were supposed to, guess what? You're never going to get funding from them again.
Right.
So you really have to do that. But the other thing that you have to remember is the foundation is your partner now. If they've given you money, they want you to be successful. They're not looking to pull their money back. They never want to pull their money back. So if there is something changes, an emergency happens, and you have to do something instead of what you said on the grant, guess what? Just call them up and say, hey, we're going through COVID right now, and this is different now, and we would like to use the funding for this. What do you think? They'll say, let me get back to you. 9 times out of 10, if you thought it through and it makes sense, they're going to say yes.
If a report comes back and there's no challenges, there's no red flags, I'm like, we need to do a site visit right now.
Exactly.
Because there's no way that you can be working in community and not have challenges. So you want to be open about what you're experiencing, optimistic, and definitely present a plan for how you're going to course correct or do something different in order to meet the needs that you put into your grant proposal. So if you think you're going to submit a proposal, or a grant report, everything's great, everything's fine. Absolutely. I'm on the first plane and I'm coming to take a visit because something's going on there that I want to know about.
You're hiding something. And then also, you're basically saying we don't need you.
Right.
Because everything's perfect. So you have to have challenges. I remember I did this when I was having a great year. I was raising money. Things were popping. And I was running my office like butter. And I one of the things that I said, I want every time that we meet, I want us to talk about not only our successes for the week, I want us to talk about our challenges or our failures, whatever you want to call it. And one of the people I was working with, she said, the first week or second week we did it, she said, oh, I didn't have any mistakes. I said, you're not trying hard enough. If you're a race car, we need some paint on your car. We need some scrapes. Otherwise, you're driving around the track too slow. You're not doing anything. So I'm saying all that to say, you need to be pushing. You need to have challenges. You need to have, everything can't be perfect, when you're doing this. So anything you want to add, or any questions you want to, because we're coming up on 10 o'clock.
I know we're right at time, but I think Carrie's question is so beautiful.
Please, I mean, we can go a little over.
Yeah, if you all don't mind, I just love Carrie's question. Hold on, I'm looking for it. Carrie, do you mind coming off mute, because now I can't find it? Here it is. Oh, how do you maintain sustainability while working in a fluid industry that often adjusts to the needs of the surrounding communities? I love that, Carrie. Can you give me just a little bit more to work with? And I love that question.
Yeah. So, hey, Lucretia.
Hi.
That's my friend, y'all. Nah. So my question, it really sticks to how we serve as a nonprofit. We serve the people, and how we identify our services and our products is based on the needs of the people. And so many times that pivots, and you go from knowing an industry or knowing a nonprofit to have a food bank, and it may have done well, it may have served its purpose, but now we're going through another time frame where people are needing more mental health services. So now you're pivoting to mental health services, but how do you maintain that sustainability? Because it takes time to build that sustainability of and that brand consistency of people knowing this nonprofit serves for this. I know I can go to them for this without becoming outdated and
Right.
and not able to make the same impact because you're not pivoting. But at the same time, you don't want to be, like you said, all things to all people.
Right. I think that's an excellent question. I think there are organizations that have core programs. These are our core programs. We're always going to have hungry people. We're always going to have people who need mental health, support. These are our core programs that we support. This is what we're known for. But there's also, like, look at all the organizations that pivoted during COVID. I mean, they changed the way they did their business because I was in an after school program at that time. We couldn't offer after school services. The entire organization shifted to doing, Meals on Wheels runs and doing X, Y, and Z while we figured out how to offer after school courses online and virtually. So those core programs remain solid. They don't go anywhere, especially if they're still meeting a need and you have the resources to fund them. And then you create these auxiliary programs that may stay around for a long time or until you no longer need it because of a particular issue. So stay true to who you are and those values, but also maintain that flexibility and that nimbleness that we love and being able to support the community where they are.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. That's a great answer. Did you know, Lucretia? You probably did. I mean, you have a PhD, but did you know that the United States, this is something to be proud of, by the way, everyone. The United States has the best nonprofit sector in the world. In the world. People fly here to learn about our nonprofits. So you hear a lot of negative things about you, but it's okay to do negative things in the for-profit. Nobody says anything about that. But as soon as one little nonprofit, all of a sudden, all nonprofits are bad. We have the best nonprofit sector in the world, and we're doing the best work. So be proud of what you're doing. Not only are you doing good work in our community, you're part of a sector that's second to none. Second to none. So I just wanted to say that.
It's dynamic.
Lucretia, any closing remarks, thoughts, and what are we going to send them? I know we wanted to send them a checklist or something.
We're going to send them a checklist, a needs assessment checklist that's going to go over a lot of the things that we talked about today. Look at it. It's really simple. Go through it and just say, yes, we have this and it's working and it's dynamite, or this is something that we might want to spend a little attention to. After you do that, give me a call. I do, 30-minute consultations to see if this is something that you want to do, or, if you need additional work, point you to resources. I do coaching, I do consultation hours. So even if we decide not to work together and you just need a thought partner, sometimes you just need somebody to push you outside of your comfort zone. You need somebody to give you different ideas to go in a different direction. Those are all services that I offer. This is dynamic work. This is work that I absolutely love and enjoy doing. And so however we can make our communities better, that's what I want to do. So you'll be receiving that document from Paul and his team sometime between today and tomorrow, right?
Yes, we'll be sending that over as well. And then you'll also be able to get a recording because we are recording this. And so we will put a link to this recording. We'll also summarize the bullets of this so you can be able to look at that as well, or share it with some of your team members. And then finally, we will put together a part 2 where we will go through with Lucretia's blessing, we'll go through a design of a program on the one of the next lunch and learns that we do. And that way you guys will be able to go through the process and see how it's done. Um, Lastly, I want to thank Lucretia for being a part of this Lunch and Learn. I think this was extremely rich information. And I just wish more people, I mean, we had a good number. We had 25 people on, but I just wish more people could hear about this and know how to design a program. It would change everything. It would people would be like, what's going on in the Black community? All these programs are, so we just really need to know how to design these programs properly. And it's not that much, it's not too much of a tweak. You just need to do the right things in the right places in the right times.
Yep.
So again, any closing remarks, Lucretia, that you would like to say?
I'll say that the investment now, it may seem like we've just talked about a lot of things, language that you may not have heard before, but honestly, the investment now will make the work down the line a lot easier. You'll be clear and you'll understand. I think someone asked a question around, mission. If you're clear about your mission, if you're clear about your vision, everything else will be checked against that particular mission and vision. And so do the work now. And so that A, you can leave a legacy, and B, the work down the line is a lot easier. You can get the funding that you need to support the program. You can bring on the staff that you need to support the program. So I thank you all. This is great, a great conversation, very rich conversation, great questions. Paul, I'm going to ask that you can send me the questions and I'll follow up with you all
For
via
sure.
email if you ask a question that I wasn't able to get to. And,
Yes.
I hope to see you in the future. And thanks for coming. Thanks for coming.
And please, everyone, it's like when you go to a conference, you get all fired up, you come back, and then you don't do anything, after the next week. Make sure you do something. You were just given incredibly rich information. If anything, reach out to Lucretia. You don't let this information go to waste. Please, let's turn these programs into legacy building, community changing programs that everyone's talking about and everyone's replicating. And then all of a sudden, everyone's afraid of us because we're running everything. So please don't go away from this without doing something. Reach out to Lucretia, reach out to us. Please do something. You've just given a gift. Let's take it and run with it. Thank you so much, Lucretia. We appreciate you. Everybody will send this information out, and we will do part 2 very, very soon. Thank you so much, and goodbye. We'll see you. Oh, by the way, sorry, one last thing. Next, I think it's April. I think we're going to do April 19th. This is going to be pretty good, everyone. I think we're going to do it on April 19th. We're supposed to do it on the 9th, maybe April 16th. Sorry. We are doing a lunch and learn. We're bringing back Deepa, who runs a AI generated grant writer. That's amazing. I mean, it's a beast. And she rewrote anyway, we're going to put out where we're going to have one individual, maybe 2, send in a program, and we're going to write a grant for the program with the AI live. So you'll be able to see it. And she says it's really fast. So we will probably do 1 or 2, maybe 3. So be ready. Look for those emails where you can have the opportunity to send in your program, and we'll write it up for you. If anything, you will have a nice description of your program. So please do that. That's going to be April 16th. Bye, everyone. Thank you for showing up, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Thank you, Lucretia. This was great. Take care, Herbert. And Herbert, Brisbane, make sure you reach out to me. I sent you my email. I got your message.
Thank you. Will do.
All right, brother. You guys be well. Take care. Desiree, Deborah, and Alana,